Okay, now in this video, let's load the conversation. So real quick, in here, if you go to the return view, let's add an array. In here, we're gonna return right here conversations. In here, let's just get user conversations latest, because we want the conversation with the latest message to be at the top. So we updated at. In here, let's just say get. Now let's create this user at the top here. User here is just going to be auth user. This will return the currently authenticated user model. So after passing these conversations, let's now go to our blade in the chat list. Let's just close the rest. Here I closed everything. Here, okay, let me open the chat list. Also open the chat list blade. In here, if you can see, we have the list here. So inside this list, we're gonna loop through this and then create the list item. So, but first of all, we're gonna start by checking if the conversations are there. If else, if conversations, then we can now loop through the conversations. Here, let's move this one below this list. If the conversations are there, then let's now create the for each loop. So for each conversation, as conversation, and inside here we're gonna have a loop, but now let's move this for each below the list again, this list item. So now if we go back to our chat list, if we refresh the page, you see you have the conversation. But now you can see things are not really dynamic. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so here let's go back in here. We're more interested in the name. So here in the name, conversation, this one from the top, conversation. Here we're going to user. No, we don't have this user. So let's create a function. So just open the conversation model. Here let's create another function called get receiver. This, it will just get the other user in the conversation because we don't know who the other user is. So just to identify them, we're going to use this function. So in here, and by the way, you might already have this function in the conversation model from the resources file I gave. So you don't have to type this, just skip this part and go back to the chat list. So in here, we're going to say if this sender ID, is equals to auth ID, then return user find the user first where ID is this receiver ID. This just means that if the sender is the authenticator, which means the other user is the other user. So I get, get the logic here. We just want to get the other user in the conversation. All right, let's just copy this one and then paste it here. Just gonna change this one to sender ID and make sure the spellings are correct. All right, so now make sure the name here is correct. Make sure it's get receiver. Yes, I think that's correct. Here, receiver is correct. All right. So now let's just copy this one. Let's go back to our chat list. In here, we're gonna say get receiver. This is gonna get the receiver, the other user, in this conversation. Here we can say name. All right, this should work fine, I think. If we go back and refresh, excellent. Now we have the name here on top. All right, next we're going to, now we're gonna change the date here. Here we can just say conversation messages. Here we're gonna say last, like want the last message, not the first. So want the last. Created at. We're gonna say this one. I'm gonna use some carbon instance of short absolute diff for humans, like that. Right now, this might give an error because currently we don't have a message. So just add question mark here, question mark there, question mark there, just so we can avoid the error of the message. Currently, it won't show anything because there's no messages. So if we go back, excellent. So now it's not showing anything, but that's okay. It means it's working fine as we want. Okay, next, let's now add some images here on the left side. So here in the avatar, right here, let's add a source. In here, we're gonna use the Unsplash image, the one we used before. So let's just type https splash.com. Here, make 500 x 500 question mark face. All right, this should be, yeah, it's not loading the images as we can see. Excellent, but the images are the same. So let's just make them different. The same trick we used before. In here, let's add hyphen key, and then we can go here, just point it as key. All right, now if we check, awesome, now it's bringing different kinds of pictures and images, which is good. All right, here let's just change one thing. Here, let's make this one the name text 900. All right, I think now it's working fine. Now, when you click on the message, you want to redirect to the other, like to the actual conversation. So here, just add a route, chat. And here, let's add the conversation ID when we click. So now if we go back right here, if right here currently it's 4, as you can see, if I click, it's going to change to 5. If I click, it's going to change to 4. So it's working fine. Excellent. Next, if the conversation matches the one on top here, this query, we're now gonna, mark this so we can just see it visually. So let's go back here on top, here in the list, the one on top. Here in the end, let's just add one more thing. Here, check conversation ID is equals to the selected conversation ID. So here add a question mark, 100 over 70, or else just don't add anything. Right, so now if we go back here, if we refresh, awesome. Now as you can see, there's now a background. If we click on this one, so we have a background here which is there. So that's good.